Are you tired of using boring screenshots in your videos? If the answer is yes, then in this video I'm going to show you how to create this cool channel screenshot animation like Internet Anarchist. So in order to create this animation, we need to take a screenshot of Internet Anarchist's channel, so make sure that you cover this section here that I'm going to show you right now. So make sure that you cover 8 of his most recent videos and their thumbnails, and also cover page and its logo. Now, for your After Effects composition, make sure that you copy these settings that I'm going to show you right now on the screen. And also duration is around 5 seconds, and then click OK. Now let's import the screenshot. Now after you import your screenshot inside Adobe After Effects, we can add additional shape layer behind the screenshot, and we can color it to the same color of our screenshot, so we can fill these black parts. So first, let's start with animating this logo here. So I'm going to make a copy of this screenshot here, and by selecting rectangle tool and creating a mask over this logo. So make sure that you cover the edges like this, and make sure that you remove mask number 1. And here in mask path, make sure that you select reset to ellipse and then click OK. And now this will create a mask in the shape of our logo. In order to check if you got it right, you can delete or toggle the vision of your screenshot. So as you can see, we only got the logo. For now, let's toggle the vision of this layer here, and let's bring this here. So let's make another copy and place it above your logo. And for now, let's make a mask out of this picture here. So let's use a rectangle tool and make sure that you cover all the edges. And then again, remove mask number 1. And we can also check it. So toggle the vision of the main screenshot, and as you can see, we only covered this picture here. Again, let's toggle the vision, and for now, let's create another copy, place it above all of these layers, and let's create a mask out of these thumbnails. So, for example, like this. And this will be our third layer. And again, remove mask number 1. Now let's also toggle the vision. Now let's create a mask out of these buttons here for latest, popular, and oldest. So we will need 3 masks. So let's create a copy. And before you move, let's create a copy 2 more times and then bring them on top. And for example, this layer here will be latest button, this will be popular button, and this will be oldest buttons. So let's start with the latest button. So select a rectangle tool, create a mask, and make sure that you cover all of these edges. And we're going to repeat the process for the rest of the buttons. And again, make sure that you remove mask number 1 on all of these layers. And if you want to check, you can toggle the vision of your main screenshot, and by revealing it, you can check if you got it right. Now let's start with animating this home, videos, shorts, playlist, and community section. So I'm going to create another copy, place it above all of these, and then let's create a mask in this shape here. And we're going to animate it by adding opacity and position change later on. And make sure to remove mask number 1. So what you need to do is place this shape layer above this screenshot here. And as you can see, after we reveal all of these masks that we made, we're left with this part here. Now, what we only need to do, divide Internet Anarchist channel name into multiple masks. So for each letter, we need a different mask. So let's make a copy of this main screenshot here, place it above all of these. And first, let's create a mask out of the channel name. And remove mask number 1. So this mask is our main. Copy this mask here and place it above. And for each mask, we're going to separate one letter. So for example, we're going to separate only I here. And as you can see, if we toggle the vision of our main, which we don't need here, we're only left with one letter. Now, if we make a copy out of I and move the right border, for example, here, and the left border here, we're only left with the letter N. And now I will fast forward to the next section where this mask will be separated. So now, after we made all of these masks, we can start with the animation. So as you saw in the Internet Anarchist intro, he first starts with animating his logo. So let's find it on our timeline. So in order to animate this logo, we have to go here in transform and select center anchor point in layer content, which will center this anchor point here in the center. And what will this allow us to do is rotate our logo like this. So select scale, rotation and opacity keyframes, and 12 frames forward, create another set of keyframes. And if we go back and decrease scale to 0 and rotation to -71 degrees and opacity to 0%, and if we select all of these keyframes and press F9, we will turn them into easy ease. And we will animate our logo like this. We can add even more rotations, for example, -221. And we're done with this section here. Now we need to animate this picture above, so let's find that mask. So we got it here. And around 5 frames, I'm going to add position and opacity. And for example, at 20th frame, I'm going to create another position and opacity. And we will leave it as it is. But if we go back and move it out of our frame and add a slight decrease in opacity, and by selecting all of these keyframes and pressing F9, we will turn it into easy ease. And if you want to smooth out even more this appearance, you can select position, and by selecting this graph editor, you can animate this graph. But I'm going to also open opacity so we can simultaneously animate these two transform effects. So for example, by holding shift and selecting these curves, you can adjust the curve to both of these effects. So for example, we'll create this sort of curve, and this will do this adjustment. So it slowly increases in speed, reaches the maximum speed, and decreases speed in this section here. But I will leave it as it was. Now we need to animate the channel names. So first, let's select our time frame to 15 frames, and let's find our first letter. So it's I. And here in transform, select position and opacity. And let's say 6 frames forward, we're going to end our I letter animation. So let's go back, move it below this first thumbnail, for example, here. And let's decrease opacity to 0% and select all of these keyframes and press F9. And what will this do is animate our letter. Or maybe let's increase the length of this animation so it is around 9 frames. Then select position, opacity, and make a copy. And then by going 2 frames forward or 1 frame forward, we can open only position and opacity. And then by pasting the keyframes that we made, we will animate the and letter. So you don't need to add transform effects to every layer. So this will fasten up your process. So again, let's go 1 frame forward. Let's animate the T letter. And I will apply this transform effects to the rest of the letters. And for this channel verification logo, we're going to go around 4 frames forward, and we're just going to apply opacity. So let's decrease opacity to 0, and around 5 frames forward, we're going to increase it to 100%. And this will do this to the verification. So far we animated logo, main, border, and channel name. So next, let's animate these buttons and also appearance of this section here. So let's first animate this. So I'm going to find it on our timeline. So it is here. And then in position and opacity, we're going to create our first set of keyframes. And around 2 and 12, I'm going to add another set of keyframes, and this is the final position. But if we go back and move it to the right side and decrease it to 0%, we're going to create an animation. So it is appearing from the right side as this channel name animation ends. And then around this point here, we're going to animate the first button. So let's go to transform, position and opacity, and around 2 and 5, I'm going to create another set of keyframes. And we go back, move it to around here and decrease it to 0% and create a easy ease. And I'm just going to copy this to effects and go 3 frames forward, only reveal position and opacity by pressing Ctrl and selecting these 2 effects and pasting the set of keyframes. We're going to animate the second button, and I'm going to repeat the process for the third button. And at this point here, so at the third second, we're going to animate the moving of these thumbnails. So let's select it, find it on our timeline, and here in transform and position, we're going to select our first set of keyframes. And around 4 and 12, select another set of keyframes, and we will leave it as it is. But in the first set of keyframes, we're going to move it, for example, here, and decrease it to 0%. Now, what we need to do out of this layer here is create another composition. And here in mask, make sure to copy it, open this layer here, and paste it on this layer here. And why we do this is because we're going to delete this one here. And we're going to create another mask. So make sure that while you're creating a mask, you select your layer and only cover this border here. And here in mask path, create a keyframe. And go forward, create another. But here, let's only select the mask and place it here. And the bottom one, move it here. And create a easy ease out of these keyframes. So what will this do is create this appearance here. And now we're finished with the main part. Now we need to introduce the 3D camera and also some glow and other effects. So I'm going to close these layers here so they don't interfere. Now we're going to select all of these layers and pre-compose it into one composition that we will rename channel. And then click OK. Now here in 3D layer, enable it. And here in new, create a new camera. And make sure to select 2-node camera and in angle of view, set it to 83 degrees. And then click OK. Now here, let's create our first anchor point for point of interest, position, X, Y, and Z rotation, and also zoom. And around this section here, we're going to create another set of keyframes and let's select position, zoom in, and increase Y value to around 632. And above, let's create a new null object and enable 3D layer. And then connect your camera to the null object. And here in position, don't create any anchor points, just move your position, for example, here. So this is the first angle. So here, let's play with X value for position. So in this point here, we're going to increase X value, decrease a bit of Y value, and increase X value. So we're at this position here. And for this, we're going to zoom in even more to around minus 611. And then select all of these keyframes and press F9. And what will this do is create this animation here. Now let's select position and open our graph editor. And here, create this sort of curve. And also for Y rotation, create the exact same curve. Here, let's create a position and move it here and create another anchor point. But here, let's move the null object to the left side and create easy ease out of these keyframes. And again, open position and graph. And by holding shift and moving it to the right side as much as you can, you'll create this curve here. And what will this do is move from the left side to the right side. Now from this point here to this point here, we're going to copy the same exact setup. And until the end, for example, here, we're going to create another set of keyframes. And also for position, just in case. Now we need to zoom out a bit. So for example, like this, and set the Y value to around 2 and the X value to 6. And for position, let's move it at around 555 for Y value, and zoom out even more by decreasing Z value. So this will create this animation so far. And let's open the graph editor for position and Y rotation. And in this case here, handle here and move it to the left side. And let's do the same for position on the null object. So now after we're done with animating null and camera, we can create a new adjustment layer. And on this adjustment layer, let's open effects and presets and type camera lens blur and drag it on your adjustment layer. And here create a ellipse tool mask, for example like this, and select inverted checkbox, and here increase mask feather to 96 pixels and apply quick chromatic aberration, which is a free plugin that you can find. And here, and chromatic aberration, let's increase position to around 2.5 or maybe even 3 or maybe even 5. And what will this do is create this sort of aberration on letters and on the edges of our mask. And finally, let's create a new adjustment layer, and here type CC lens and drag it on your adjustment layer. And here in size, increase it to around 236. And finally, above all of these layers, let's create a CC vignette effect on our newly created adjustment layer and leave it at 100 for amount and 48 for angle of view. And that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and found something useful. If you want to support me, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, bye.